Someone told me that this is the official start of fall. Is that true? Is the official start of fall? It doesn't feel like fall. It feels a little warm, but enjoy the warmth just a little bit longer because it will be gone soon, all right? Well, hey, welcome to our church. If you're new, maybe it's the first time you've been here at X Church, we're honored to have you today. My name is Tim, and I get the honor of leading this amazing church community. And we started last week a new series of messages, a conversation. If you're new to church, in fact, I was just reminded sometimes people are new to church and they're like, what's that thing you do where I guess it changes and you talk about something for a little bit? And so we love to focus oftentimes on a single concept for a few weeks because we find that it really helps us to get it inside of us and understand it. And so we'll do what we call a series of messages that are all focused around helping us grow in a specific area. And last week, we began this new conversation talking about connection. And really, even deeper than just connection is relationship. And what does it look like for us to have meaningful relationships in our life? Here's one thing that we continually discover, is that the most important thing that people find over and over and over again in their lives in order to have a meaningful, fulfilled life is relationships. It's not how much money you make. It's not what kind of car you drive. It's not the kind of house you live in. It's not the lifestyle you have. It's not the trips you get to take. But the thing that really impacts our life more than anything else are the relationships in our lives. And so we're trying to get better at them. I think it's an area that we could grow because, let's be honest, our world has changed, just significantly, and can I say the last maybe 20 years. Now, if you're younger, if you're like early 20s or you're a teenager, this is the world that you've grown up in. But for those of us a little bit more experienced, like my good friend, Pastor Russ, whose birthday is today, and so I won't even give the age, but just know this, he's experienced. He's wise now. He's mature. So anyways, happy birthday, my friend. Anyway, I didn't mean to do that. It just caught my attention. But one of the things, if you're a little bit older than, say, 20 or 30, but if you grew up like I did, kind of a little bit older than that, what you've seen is our world has changed dramatically. Like we live in, can we recognize a digital era? Where like all of our connections today have almost become digital. What once was an in-person conversation or a phone call has turned into a text message, a DM, a snap, just different ways that we communicate. It's so different today. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's better or worse. We just need to recognize it's real and it affects us. I really can relate to this because I think about how much it has changed our relationships. When I was dating my girlfriend, who then became my wife, so when we first started dating, we had fallen in love and we were in a relationship for about a year and it was, we spent all of our time together. That's what you do when you're dating someone and you're in love, right? And here's what that meant. This was back in the 90s. That meant we would drive over to her house or she drove over to my house after work or, school, college. And we would talk on the phone, but it wasn't a cell phone and there was no text. Didn't you guys text back? No, back then we had landlines and we had to call each other and you had to wait your turn on the phone if somebody else was on the phone. And we had this amazing relationship. And then all of a sudden in one summer, my wife's parents had this brilliant idea that they were going to steal her away from me for 2 weeks to take her on a family vacation to Maine. And I was devastated. It was like living the Romeo and Juliet story. Somebody just did not want us together. That's what it feels like when you're dating, right? You're in love. And so she goes off to Maine. And back then, long distance phone calls cost something. They were expensive, so we couldn't talk all the time. We used to talking every day, and you felt separated. So we actually, thankfully, survived a really long, strenuous 2-week long distance relationship that we had. But do you know what we did to stay in connection with each other? We wrote letters. Let's be honest, when was the last time you wrote a letter to somebody? Just think about it. Yeah, a long time ago. We would write letters and then you'd wait about 2 days for them to get that letter and then they'd write to you and respond and send it back. And that's what life was like a long time ago. Today, we are so connected digitally, which is amazing. The benefits of technology, I mean, you think about families at long distances can stay connected to each other so much easier. As a grandparent, you can be connected to your grandkids even if they live many states away or 15 minutes away. Let me just tell you, in our situation, our grandson is 15 minutes away, but if we go 2 days without seeing him, we literally are texting his mom and dad and say, we need videos. You ever do that, Grandpa? I need videos. I need pictures. I need something. Literally almost every day, we need something. Technology is amazing. It enables us to connect to people outside of our local community. I had a lady that approached me this week when I was at the grocery store, and she came up to me, and I didn't recognize her because she's never been in our church. And she said, hey, are you pastor of X Church? And I said, guilty, and she said, I watch you every Sunday. I said, oh, that's awesome. Where do you live? And she said, I live in Amanda. I said, it's not that far. You should come say hi. I'd love to see you in person sometime, if you're able to. But it's just a reminder that technology is pretty amazing. That we have people almost on a regular basis that connect online. So I just want to say, if you connect from all over the place online, we're just so honored that you are. We have people that give their life to Jesus through the broadcast of what happens. It happened twice last week. I'm just so grateful for what technology has afforded us. However, let's all at least recognize that there is a difference between having a digital connection and building a real-world relationship. Like, I love getting videos of my grandson, but do you know what I love even more? Hanging out with him. This is what I'm talking about. Like, there's a difference between the digital connection. They're great. I'm grateful for digital connections, but can I just tell you the truth is, one of the things that I think we crave more and more is beyond a digital connection, but it's a real world, face-to-face, presence together relationship. These are the things that I believe make life so meaningful, so full of joy. In fact, we wanted to kind of poll you guys, and so for the last couple of weeks, and maybe every week this series, we're gonna do a poll. And so it was interesting this week in our app. If you have our app, you should log on every week because we always got new stuff on there. But we asked this simple question, and I asked them to put it out there, and I wanted to know, what is your preferred method of communication? And I found this interesting, that 46% of our church so far, and if you haven't done it, the numbers are climbing. We've got hundreds of responses, prefer digital over in person. More people today prefer digital connection more than in person. And maybe it's because the reality of life is that it's really hard to connect with your friends and with the other people, all the time, but it's much easier through digital, so I understand that. But I also know that today, more than ever before, we're struggling with loneliness. There's a correlation between how much time someone spends on social media and how lonely they feel, and they find that the longer you spend on social media, the lonelier you feel in life. In other words, screen-to-screen communication has, in many ways, and is replacing face-to-face communication. In fact, I asked this question last week, and so I thought, okay, well, let's talk about it this week. We asked the question last week, and we said, what of your relationships do you have tension with the most, or do you struggle with the most? And the number one answer was friends. It was friendship. So here's what I want to do. I want to turn our focus today as we continue this conversation. And I want to talk about what most people, believe it or not, believe is perhaps the most important relationship we can have in life. Believe it or not, and that's friends. It's not family, but it's friends. Now, sometimes your best friend can be a family member, it could be your spouse. My wife is my best friend, but I found this interesting. Pew Research Center did a study last year, and they asked this question. They said, what is the most important factor for living a fulfilled life, having a meaningful, fulfilling life? And the number one factor wasn't about relationships. I think it was like 71% of people said having a job or career. I think it's important. Having a purpose is really what that relates to. The second answer, this is what was said. The most important thing for a fulfilling life is to have an extremely close friend. 61% of Americans surveyed said having a close friend was extremely important to having a fulfilling life. And this was significantly higher than marriage at 23% and having children at 26%. So we actually believe that having a close friend is maybe more important than even being married or having children. And of course, you got young people that maybe aren't married and don't have children in that pool, so that would maybe make sense. But I think there is a difference, isn't there, between family and friends sometimes? And I know, so like I said, my wife and I, we actually were best friends before we were dating, before an attraction grew, and we spent all of our time together, and that served us really well now that my daughters are married and moved out of the house, and it's just the two of us again, and we're still friends and still like each other. But here's the thing I've noticed about friendships and family. Family's important, but unlike family, friendships are different because friendships are not based upon a need for survival. Think about it, right? When you're young, you need mom and dad to survive. There's something about the family bond that is critical for life. It is important about life, is that we need to have family, okay? There's no question about that. But here's the thing, friends are a little bit different, and here's one of the primary reasons why. It's because we choose them. In fact, let me give you this thought, and that is that we get to choose our friends, we don't get to choose our family. True, isn't it? We get to choose our friends. That's the best part. We don't get to choose our family. You didn't get to choose who your parents were. You don't, in many ways, get to choose who your children are. I mean, you might choose to have them, but you don't get to choose how they come out. You don't get to choose whether or not they're people you're gonna like or not. I mean, just be honest, right? I love mine, so don't get me wrong, but we don't get to choose. You don't get to choose who your siblings were. I didn't get to choose to have an older brother and a younger sister. I didn't get to choose that. Right? You don't get to choose who, to have a crazy aunt or a deranged uncle or some kind of extended family member. We don't get to choose them. But here's the thing about friends. Friends are the people we choose. And even more than that, friends are the people who choose us. And here's why I believe it is so critical, why it's so important, and why friendships matter, why we would say that having a close friendship is the most important relationship for a fulfilled life, is because I believe that it meets one of our deepest core human needs, and that is a desire for acceptance. We all want to be accepted. And here's the thing we know about family. It's kind of built in. It's kind of like, you gotta love me. I'm your kid, right? You gotta stick with me. We're blood. But there's something about a friend that sticks by your side when they don't have to, that I think fulfills almost kind of one of those deep intrinsic needs, and that is we all want to be wanted. We all want somebody to choose us. We also want somebody who will want to be with us, and so a close friend, listen, it could be one really close friend. I want to ask you, do you have one close friend? Do you have a couple? I don't think we need to have a ton. But do you have someone who you can be real with and they can be real with you? Because here's the other crazy thing. While we have one survey that says that a close friend is extremely important to having a fulfilled life, there's another survey that came out by American Survey Center just recently that said since the 1990s, the number of Americans who say they have no close friend has quadrupled. So in one sense, we're saying, I need to have a close friend. And another reality is that a lot of people don't have any close friends. So this is why we live in an era that it's beautiful because we're digitally connected, but for some reason, we feel lonelier than ever, and we're having a harder and harder time really building real friendships. So much has changed in our world, and I think it's important. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about what I would say is probably one of the most overlooked skills that we need to have in life to be a friend and to have friends. This you might not feel very spiritual, but I'm gonna show you that it is. And if you're wondering if we're gonna get to the Bible, we're gonna get to the Bible. So trust me, we'll get there. But I want us to consider what I think is perhaps one of the most overlooked attributes that we need to possess if we're gonna be fulfilled in life through relationships, especially when it comes to our friendships. And I'm talking about emotional intelligence. I want to talk about EQ for a little bit. Emotional intelligence. This is why it's so important, because when I was growing up, no one talked about EQ. Now, it stands for emotional quotient, which is how we measure the amount of emotional intelligence. Same thing, basically. But no one talked about emotional intelligence. It wasn't a popular thing. Do you know what everybody obsessed on when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s? Everybody was obsessed with IQ, right? Intelligence quotient. It's your intelligence, the how intellectually smart are you? I remember that being a big deal. And when the internet was just like really just taking off, I remember early on that there was these tests that people, has anybody ever taken an IQ test? Raise your hand if you ever taken an IQ test. Probably less and less today. But it was real popular. You'd take this IQ test because they believed in modern society that your IQ level was directly connected to how successful you'd be in life. In other words, how smart you were, how quick you picked up on things, how well you learned stuff. That's all part of your IQ, your intellectual quotient. And so we would take these tests and it would score us, and then we compare with everybody else, and we thought that was the thing, which makes sense in a modern age that puts heavy emphasis on information, on scientific knowledge, that we would put all of our emphasis on intelligence, information, how smart you were. Now, can I ask you a question about intelligence? Because all of us probably know people that are really, really smart. Has any of you ever known someone in your life that you thought to yourself, you know, they're too smart for their own good? You ever known anybody like that? You ever known someone that was just brilliant, off the charts smart? They seem to know something about everything, you know, whatever you're talking about, whatever it could be. It could be business strategy, about global events. It could be economic things. It could be medical things. Whenever you talk to them, they seem to know something about everything. They're so incredibly brilliant, and yet there are times when you're with them and you're in an environment and they just say some things and you go, that was pretty dumb. How many of you know someone like that? Raise your hand if you know someone like that. All right, and if your hand's not up, more than likely you're that person. So I just wanted to say that the good news is people think you're really intelligent. The bad news is you're socially inept. That's what that means. You ever been around people that's just like they didn't get it? It's like, you know, normal people don't say those things. You know, it's like, I don't know how you have any friends, sir. You know what I mean? Like, because one of the things that we've learned, and I'm glad we've learned this over, say, the last 10, 20 years, is that we've learned that emotional intelligence might actually be more important to being happy, to enjoying your life, to staying married, to being successful in business, that it's not your intellectual intelligence, it's your emotional intelligence that might actually determine the kind of life that you live. And so we see things beginning to shift in our culture, an awareness. Now you say, what is emotional intelligence? Let me give you a quick little definition I pulled together. I would describe emotional intelligence like this. It's the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions and our relationships. In other words, it's an awareness of how you're coming across to those around you. It's an awareness of how when somebody in your life is struggling that you recognize what you should and shouldn't say. It's an awareness of how to manage your emotions or say your anger so you don't let it destroy your marriage. It's an awareness of how to understand when a friend is going through something really difficult, what it means to be there for them. It's so vital. It's interesting that we continue to keep finding that it's the emotional awareness of your emotions, your soul, your interactions with others and relationships that actually is far more important for the life that we all want to live than maybe your IQ and how smart you are and what your GPA was in school and what you got your degree in. You know, it's like we say a lot of times, you know, you hear people say in business, it's not what you know, it's who you know that makes a big difference. Now here's the beautiful thing that we're finding out about EQ. Most experts say your IQ is set from a young age. It won't really change. Doesn't matter if you go to school, how much you learn, because it's really not just about that. It's just that natural ability to absorb and understand things. But they are discovering that you can grow your EQ. You can learn and become more aware of how you're being received by others. You can learn how to manage your emotions. You can learn a lot of things that the Bible teaches us. Here's what I find fascinating, and I always love this. I always love when the world around us begins to catch up with the Bible. A book that was written by all these different people thousands of years ago that has such invaluable wisdom. Can I tell you, if you want to grow your EQ, read Scripture. Read Scripture. I can help you right now. If you suck at relationships, read Scripture. Start following Jesus. If you want to get better at relationships, Jesus was a mastermind of EQ. People overlooked him because they weren't sure of his IQ. Oh, he was brilliant. But what they noticed was his EQ. Jesus saw people when nobody else saw them. Jesus could walk into an environment and see the one person who's hurting and struggling that everybody else ignores, and he goes for that person to touch and heal. Jesus was always talking about how we need to be aware of how we're received by others. Jesus said that if somebody has an offense with you, I don't have a problem with them. Jesus said that doesn't matter. If they have a problem with you, leave what you're doing and go to them to resolve it. If you are offended, you forgive somebody who's hurt you. All Jesus pretty much talked about was about our relationship with him and with each other and the power of emotional intelligence. And if you really want to grow your ability to be a friend, learn to follow Jesus. Read Scripture. In fact, let's do that right now. If you got a Bible with you, I want you to look with me at Colossians chapter 3. I thought about this passage. You know, there's a few stories and a few places, but friendship is not something that's easy to understand and ascertain. We don't have classes. Nobody really teaches you on this. You just learn at the school of hard knocks. You learn by failing. And so you have to get a little creative when you're trying to discover what it takes to be a good friend, but I see a connection between that and what it means to follow Jesus. And so Colossians chapter 3 is a beautiful passage that I think speaks to what matters maybe more than anything to God and matters really to us when it comes to relationships. Colossians 3 verse 12 says this, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves. Remember what I said about friendship? One of the most beautiful things about friends is they're the people that we choose and the people who choose us. I love this passage because it says that God chose you. And when you hear holy people, I think the first thing we think is, I got to be real righteous. That's not what that means. It means set apart. It means God's chosen you. Can I just tell you something? God chooses you. He doesn't have to, but he chooses you and me, and he loves you. And he says, because of that, what we receive from him, you must clothe or put on yourselves with knowledge, with information. No. What does it say? It says with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, clothe yourselves with what? Say it out loud. Clothe yourselves with love. This might be the thing that matters most to God. Maybe it should matter to us. Clothe yourself with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your heart. That is such a powerful statement. There are so many people looking for peace in this life. The relationship that will bring the most peace in your life is the one with Jesus. Allow him in you to bring peace, for as members of one body, you're called to live in peace and always be thankful. These are the attributes that Scripture says that we are to embody as the body, as the church of Jesus. These are the attributes. I want us to note what the Apostle Paul says are maybe the highest value in God's eyes. It's not how much you know. Please hear me. This is really important even in the church, because one of the things that I've seen over the years in the world of church is that there are a lot of people that are obsessed with their knowledge. Obsessed with the knowledge of God, obsessed with the doctrine, obsessed with their beliefs, obsessed with their theology. Listen, I'm not saying doctrine, theology, and all those things aren't important, but what I am saying is I've seen in the church world that sometimes we're so obsessed with all of that, but the same people can be obsessed with all that knowledge and still be a jerk to everybody they see. When we act like that, we have got it backwards. Information Do you think God's impressed with our information? Oh man, she's pretty smart, man. I made a smart one there. You think God's impressed with how much we know? Do you know what impresses God? How well we love others. How well we love one of his sons and daughters. That matters more than our knowledge. In fact, I would say it this way. I don't know if I can make this bold statement, but I believe that as a follower of Jesus, your EQ matters more than your IQ. As a follower of Jesus, your EQ matters more than your IQ. In other words, how you treat someone else matters a whole lot more than your theology or your doctrine. Right? How you respond to somebody else out of mercy matters a whole lot more than any creed that you adhere to. Because at the end of the day, it's not your belief that matters, it's your behavior. Like it's your behavior that illustrates the fruit of Jesus in your life. And I think when Jesus said, the whole world will know you're my disciples, not by how much you know and how much you can outwit the world and how much you can show them their faults and their sins and all this. Jesus said, the whole world will know you're my disciples by how you love one another. I know it's super basic stuff. So I get it, it's real basic. But I don't know any other way than to help us when it comes to the area of relationships and friendships other than to lean into what it looks like to not just be a good human, but to be a follower of Jesus. Because this will have more impact on your relationships. And what I see today in our culture, sadly, is I see more and more shortness of qualities like kindness. Kindness is a lost art, right? We're short on mercy. We don't have a lot of mercy. We don't give a lot of grace to people. We're short on forgiveness. You cross me, you're done. That's the way we live in life. And we wonder why our relationships are such a struggle. We wonder why we don't have any close friendships. So here's what I want to do. For the time we have remaining, I want this to get real practical, okay? I want to just share with you what I believe are some really important qualities. I want to challenge you, encourage you to write these down. If you're not in our notes app, you should get in there because they'll be in there. You can write them down. But I want to give you 6 qualities that I think will be incredibly helpful for maintaining friendships and relationships. But here's the thing, but also helping you develop them. I was at dinner with some couples from our church this Friday. And one of the ladies said something that caught my attention. I knew what we were talking about today. And she talked about when she came to church and how she felt before she came to church and became part of a community. She said, I never realized how difficult it would be to find friends as an adult. You know, I think we find friends when we're young because we're thrust into this social environment called school. And you just got to find some people that you connect with just so you can make it through. But when you get out of school and you start going into environments that you choose, all of a sudden you find that it can be hard to find friends, to make friends. And maybe in our digital age, I fear that it's becoming easier and easier to lose friends. In a political year like now, it's easier and easier to lose friends and family. It's easier to be divided and recognize what separates us rather than the things that keep us together. And so I just want to share, if I could, just 6 qualities that I think could help when it comes to friendship. The first one, and we saw this in Colossians 3, is the power to forgive. Here's what I know. The closer we get to people, the more likely it is that we're going to be hurt by them. You all know that, right? That's why the person that probably can hurt you the most might be your spouse. It's probably an indication they're one of your best friends. Is because the closer and closer we get, when you spend more time with someone, the easier it is to be offended by them. And how are we to respond when we're offended, when we're hurt? Well, we saw this in Colossians 3. Let me replay that just for a moment. Verse 13 says, make allowance for each other's faults. You know what that means? It means allow some room for people to be human. Don't hold an expectation that you cannot meet. You know, oh, my friend's got to be perfect, but I'm not perfect. And so the moment I let somebody else down, you know what I want them to do? Forgive me. If you want people to forgive you, you need to practice forgiving others. So Colossians 3, right? Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. But what if they say something really mean? It doesn't matter. What if they looked at me one time and they said, you're being a jerk right now? Well, number one, you may be being a jerk. Maybe ask, is there any truth to it? Maybe ask somebody else. Am I a jerk sometimes? I'm just talking about some real simple EQ stuff, okay? This stuff we don't do, we don't practice. But forgiveness is such a powerful quality for us to model. And here's why it's so important is because the Lord forgave us, so we need to forgive others. And people will let you down. And I got news, you're gonna let people down. If you want a second chance and a third chance, you need to be a person who gives second chances and third chances. And I believe the mark of an enduring friendship will be the ability to forgive quickly. Not slowly, not when I get over it, not when I stop feeling it anymore. Do you know you can forgive somebody and still be hurt by them? It might take time for there to be healing. It may take time for God to heal you and that relationship to heal, but you can forgive them because it's an act. It's choosing to surrender what they did to God and say, God, you're just. And also recognizing I screw up too, and so I need that grace. So I think forgiveness is a huge key in any relationship, let alone in friendship. We gotta learn to forgive quickly. The second quality I think we need is respect. Let's all say that word out loud together. It's respect. I think this is such an important word in our culture today because I feel like we're losing it. But friendships thrive most on mutual respect. When you respect that person and they respect you. What does it mean to respect someone? I would say it's when we're considerate of how they feel. That's when we're respecting them. We respect someone when we meet them for lunch or coffee and we put down our digital device. Well, we should practice that more. That's respect, right? Well, let's talk about digital devices. You know a really respectful thing to do? Respond to your text messages. I feel like I needed to say that for some people in here. This doesn't feel like a sermon. Nope, this is real life. That's not in Scripture, no. But Scripture talks a whole lot of what it looks like to love other people. This is respect. Respond when people communicate with you. Don't leave them on red. You got to respond. This is real important, right? These are just some simple ways. We respect others when we keep our word. We honor our commitments. We respect someone when we value their perspective, even if it's different than ours. The reason why we struggle with friendship so much today is because we find one thing that we disagree about and we stop our relationships. In this polarizing day, can I just tell you, if you keep it living like that, you will die alone. Nobody wants to die alone. So sometimes swallow your pride and go, you know what? It's not worth arguing over that political point. I can still be friends. We can still love each other. This is what respect is. It's respecting. They might have a different perspective than I do, and that's okay. That's okay. It's respecting boundaries. These things are all important. I feel like respect is an integral part to developing real good relationships. Let me give you another one. I'm just going through some qualities. You got to write these down. You can go wrestle with them later. But I think every good relationship needs investment. Investment. You have to invest in other people, okay? You cannot continue to make withdrawals and not expect to bankrupt the relationship. Just like you can't make all the withdrawals out of your checking account without ever depositing money into it. Relationships work the same way. One-way relationships will not survive. There has to be a level of investment in the other person. And listen, I'm just gonna say this, and I don't know if this is gonna make me sound old. But this is not always investment. Texting is great. It's a great way to kind of keep a connection with somebody. It's a great way that you can kind of you can communicate here and there, texting, but this should never replace in-person investment you make with other people in your life. I just feel like, I know some of this, it seems like so obvious to some, But there are some people, can I just say, especially the younger generation, I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm just saying you've grown up and this has been your best friend. People today are growing up and this is their best friend. Don't make this your best friend. It's a tool that'll help you connect. And then to spend time with a best friend is to actually be with them. You know the difference between connection and relationship? I believe is presence. It's presence. What does it mean to give your presence? Your friends aren't always looking for your advice. They just want your presence. We have to. That requires time. It requires energy. And you don't have to have a ton of close friends because honestly, I don't know that we have the time to honestly have a lot of close friends. We can have some friends, but close friends? I really do think life has been better for me. And I even know, can I just say this, my wife and I, a lot of times when we find friends that we can go out and do stuff with together, like those are the things that are just the most filling for us in our relationships. But it takes time. It takes work. It takes energy. You have to make an investment in the other person. Let me give you another attribute I think is really important, kind of overlooked, and it's kind of a trigger word today, and it shouldn't be, but it's the word empathy. Empathy. I think every good relationship relies upon empathy. Let me just say, this is what how I would describe empathy. Empathy is an ability to imagine life from someone else's perspective. It's a real simple way to think about it. It's an ability to imagine what life is like in their shoes. This is so important from your relationships. It'll change your relationships the moment you can hurt when you see them hurting. The moment you can celebrate when they have something to celebrate. Can I just tell you that one of the things that makes sometimes friendships so hard is when you watch someone else get something good that you wish you had. And you can't celebrate what happened in their life because you're jealous. That's the kind of thing that'll destroy a friendship. I think about 1 Corinthians 12. Paul was doing this passage talking about what it means to be in community in the body of Christ. And I love this. He said, if one part suffers, every part suffers. What is that? That's empathy. If someone in your circle's hurting, you should be hurting with them. And then he said, if one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. In other words, I should be able to celebrate when good things happen in your life. I should get excited for you. You just had something major happen. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to go out to eat. We're going to celebrate that rather than being jealous that it never happened to you. Empathy is so important. In fact, I would argue and say that it might be the highest expression of love there exists, is empathy. Maybe next to giving your life. Okay, we can say that. But empathy is just, Jesus modeled empathy so much. When people were hurting, he was hurting. In fact, there was a time when he and his disciples were hurting themselves because John the Baptist had been killed. And they tried to get away by themselves, but a crowd of people running to Jesus because they were broken and hurting. And the moment Jesus saw them, he couldn't help because he was hurting. He said they're like sheep without a shepherd. He was hurting because they were hurting, and he had to minister to them. This is a quality I think that we need. This is a quality that will change your relationships, empathy. And I think we can grow in it. I'm growing in it. To see somebody that's hurting and to feel that way and understand and appreciate their perspective. I think empathy is something we need. Here's another one. This one's going to be kind of dumb obvious, but I feel like we need to talk about it. I just think we need to be nice. Does that seem so dumb? I know it feels dumb. Like, we just need to be nice. I know. We're like, well, this is a really simple message. We did not go deep today, Pastor. I get it. I know. And yet at the same time, I look at our culture today and I just see rudeness as normal. It's normal, right? Not waving at your neighbors is expected. I just live my own life. I don't need to interact with anybody else. When I think about life today, I'll just be honest with you. People are just downright mean and rude, sometimes cruel. You don't believe me? Any one of the Instagram posts that you see today, just look at the comment section. The keyboard warriors that we have today that are so bold to say anything and everything that they would never say if they were standing in front of their face. That we live in a culture today that has lost the art of being nice. Let's just talk about being nice. You want to have friends? Be friendly. So simple, isn't it? You want to make friends? Be a friend. You want to have friends? Be a nice person. Can I just tell you just some things I think we've lost that have just creeped in as I see us getting more and more just like we're just rude. I'll say this for anybody who works in the restaurant industry. But one of the things I've been really trying to do the last, several weeks, I've just been thinking about this. I was challenged by somebody, is to actually see the person who's serving you at the table as a real person and not just as your servant. You know what that might mean? Because they'll show up and the first thing they're all trained to do is, hi, my name's Tim. I'll be taking care of you. Can I help you with some drinks? And you know what's easy to miss? What was their name? Oh, hey, waiter, waitress, whatever. They have a name. Somebody gave birth to them. Somebody loves them. God loves them. Let's treat them as a human. So one of the things I've been trying to do is to not be so impatient to go, I need to order my drink and my food and hurry up and we need appetizers because we're really hungry, but to pause and actually get their name and then later actually refer to them by their name. It's just being nice. It's just to be nice. Here's an idea. Leave a nice tip. Don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Well, the service wasn't great. I don't care. You have no idea what they're dealing with. You have no idea the day they've had. If you want, again, this is why I say, how do we become good friends? Be a follower of Jesus. What would Jesus do? What would he do in that moment? He'd see that person. Try waving to your neighbors. Here's a crazy thought. When you see them out walking by your house, go out and have a conversation with them. Just simple stuff. How about this? Next time you're at the grocery store, and I know you're talking to your spouse because of everything you need, do me a favor, get off your phone before you go through the checkout line because that person's a real person. And if we would just recognize that I'm not gonna just ignore them while I'm talking on phone because this person's more important than the person in front of me. This is the most basic human talk I've ever done. And yet, it's missing in our culture today. And I wonder if the world around us, the church, would actually want to know our God more if Jesus' followers were nicer. Because one of the reasons why people have been turned off to the God we say we serve is because we are jerks sometimes. And I know we're human, but it's on us to be nice. You want to have friends? Be nice, because nobody wants to be around someone who's a jerk. Let me give you the last quality. The last quality is be dependable. We're out of time. We need to bring in the keys. I gotta finish, Janice. I could probably go on forever, but I gotta stop. Be dependable. Be someone that others can count on. Like, this is just real common sense, but sometimes we don't do it. Like, be someone that when you say that you'll do something, then do it. That's one version of being dependable. Can I give you another version of being dependable? This might not sound like it, but I'll show you that it is. Do your friends trust that you only say good things about them when they're not there? Because loyalty sometimes looks like you don't talk badly about them when they're not there. That's loyalty. And if you have a group of friends and one of the things that you guys do when you get together is talk about other people, including other people that aren't there in your friend circle, you better bet that they talk about you when you're not there. Those aren't the right kind of friends to have. Or if they are, you should speak up and say, this ain't right. To be a dependable friend is to be someone who's when somebody needs help, you're the first person to say, when can I come over and help? When somebody's moving, you don't find every excuse you can to get out of it because, man, I don't want to give up my Saturday morning and go over and move, and we better be done before the High State game starts at noon because I want to know. A friend says, what time do you need me there? See, we need people like this in our lives. This is how we live a really fulfilled life. This is happiness. It's not how much money you make. It's the quality of the people in your life. And so when we talk about friends, these qualities, let me ask you a question. Do you forgive quickly? Do you respect each other? Do you make investments in other people? Do you invest in the people around you? Do you have empathy? Do you respect other people when they're going through something? You're like, man, I can understand what you're going through. Are you a nice person? You ought to be a nice person. Are you dependable? Yes, I made it so obvious that it spells friend when you look at it, but I just did that so you'd remember. Forgive, respect, invest, empathy, nice, be dependable. These are some of the most basic human qualities that will really help you to have a friend and to keep your friends, because you'll be able to be a friend. We crave friendship. We all want a close friend in life. And here's the most beautiful thing, it'll blow your mind, because friends are about those who choose us, and we read this earlier. One of the things that blows my mind about God is that God is not just some transcendent being or creator that exists outside of space and time, who started everything and left us to fight on our own and figure it out. But I love this beautiful picture of God, that we can see him as a friend. You know, in James it says that Abraham believed God and was credited to him righteousness, and that God considered him a friend. When I think about the fact that Jesus left his perfect world to step into our broken world, what was he doing? He was going beyond just this intergalactic connection. And he was stepping into our world, so that people could experience him and he could experience us in presence. And Jesus showed up. He did not have to, but he showed up so that you and I could relate to God, so that we could have a friend. Let me just tell you, if you showed up here today, and even this talk, you're like, I don't have a lot of friends. I want you to know this. First of all, this community is a place for you to find friends. I hope this is the friendliest group of people you'll ever meet. I really do. Not perfect, and we'll talk about that next week. We're going to talk about community. It's not perfect, but I hope that we reflect the heart of Jesus. And this is some of the friendliest people you ever meet. This is a great place to make friends, but let me just tell you this. One of the most beautiful things in relationship that you can have with God is that he could be your friend. Friendship with God is something that seems so counter to anybody who only knows God through religion. But when you begin to know Jesus through relationship, you experience friendship with him. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Why don't you stand to your feet with me? You know, one of the things that is needed to build and develop a friendship with each other is investment of time and energy. Can I tell you what these moments are about right now? It's about you investing in your friendship with God. So would you do me a favor? Just close your eyes for a moment. Let's not be in a rush to move on, because we're so distracted and busy in this life that we aren't making time for relationships. Let's make time for a relationship with God right now. Just close your eyes. What, in your mind, what does it look like for you to put your attention, your focus on the God who loves you and chose you? God, we come to you now, so incredibly grateful for your love for us. God, I don't deserve it. It's hard for me to imagine that you would want to be a friend to me. I'm so messed up and broken, and I've failed you over and over, but God, I'm also reminded that you're a God of mercy and grace and patience and kindness, and all those qualities that you call us to have. It's because you have that toward me, toward us. And so here we are, God, in this moment saying thank you for loving us. Thanks so much for tuning into this message. I hope that it encouraged you and inspired your faith. If God is doing something in your life, would you take a moment and let us know? We want to connect with you, and we want to be able to pray for you. All you have to do is shoot us an email to hello@thex.church, or you can always send us a DM on one of our social media platforms. And if you know somebody that would also be encouraged by this very message, why not take a moment and just share it with them right now? And as always, I want to say thank you to every single person who so generously financially supports this ministry so we can continue to get messages like these out to people all over the world. We believe God is building something special and you're a significant part of it. Until next time, have a great day.